Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment, 171st conversation. Got a very special guest today. Troy Crabtree joins us. He's done an awful lot and is still doing an awful lot. So I'm going to let him talk about his entire path and where he's at today. Troy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me. Hey, I love the intro, the music. I found myself rocking, so great intro.
I get sometimes more praise for the intro than for my style. So it's like maybe I should just
Yeah.
play music the entire time. So as I mentioned in the intro, you have done a lot, and of course, and I should mention too. We'll probably talk about this a little more, but our career paths actually first touched cross paths like God, probably about 25 years ago.
That's
So
right.
start from the beginning. Why did you get into technology, and just bring us through to where you're at today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a great question. It's one that I get asked a lot, and it's a unique one. If you would have met Troy in high school, I would have never told you that I would have been a technology guy. I was always thought I was going to be a baseball player. That was my route. And then what ends up happening, as we all do, you find out that that route to the pros is probably not going to happen, and you got to pick another route. And so for me, I ended up in the military. And in the military, I got hurt. I actually broke my big toe and I was on light duty. And my division officer came to me and said, "Hey, I pulled your ASVAB. It seems like you're a fairly smart guy. Let me send you to school to learn to do some computer programming. Have you ever done that?" And I said I had not. He sent me to school while we were while I was on light duty. I learned to write code. I found out that I was good at it. I didn't know, and I was addicted to it from that point forward. And as soon as I got out of the military, I pursued my degree in computer science.
And appreciate your service. And then what was your first position after school?
So actually, I actually began doing positional tech work while I was in college. That's where you and I overlapped for a period of time. But I actually got into the restaurant industry and was working with companies where I was installing switches and routers. And so I actually got into the networking side of things while I was learning to be a developer, and that's really benefited me in my professional career, where I get the hardware side of it as well as the development side, and that's allowed me to sit in multiple seats.
And then at some point in time, you ended up, okay, I'm just looking at your LinkedIn. You were director of technology for FreshPoint for a while. You served as CTO for Direct General. And then at some point in time, you founded your own company, right?
I did, yeah, and it's one of those things, Greg, where as an entrepreneur, it was burning in me for a long time. And even in my route, if you look at my LinkedIn profile and you see that I was the director of IT for a company here in town that was a produce company that got acquired by Cisco, that even in itself was an entrepreneur route where we knew we were building towards an event. So if you look at my journey, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur. It's been in me since day one. And I stepped out and really founded and became a single entity solo guy that started a company when I stepped out and started Navita on my own in 2014.
And what were you doing with Navita?
So at the moment in time, I had left Direct General, and
Hmm.
I had identified a problem in the industry. At Direct General, I had a large distributed footprint of 1,000 retail stores, and I had all these moving parts of that I needed an MSP as well as an MSSP to help me with handling large distributed retail stores that had small footprints but were business critical for revenue. And I
Hmm.
started looking around the industry for MSPs and MSSPs that could solve that problem. What I found out, and I did a nationwide RFP. I brought all the major players. What I found out is there wasn't one entity that would do that. I ended up having to piecemeal two or three teams together from companies and try to figure out a way to solution and solve that. So when we sold Direct and we were happy to make that transaction, the next step for us was to step out, and I said, why don't we take the business case that we struggled to solve for at Direct and let's start a company that we attack the distributed footprint, the ability to manage moving assets and in a distributed model, as well as all the MSSP components that are wrapped around it.
And are you still are you still working with Navita?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
still, so that's still
yeah,
running.
absolutely.
You've also got another company called Telemate.
Yeah, so I feel I almost looked like I had a crystal ball and knew that COVID was coming. What happened was Navita had got pulled in to doing telemedicine previous to COVID. And telemedicine previous to COVID really meant being able to bring specialists and bring other service lines down to rural hospitals and rural clinics that you really couldn't bring. So we were using these telemedicine opportunities to do that. And so what we decided, we had a business inside of a business, and so we decided to carve out a company called Telemate and really focus on remote patient monitoring and remote healthcare. And since that's happened, now Telemate is really, really doing well. Last count, we had a couple of hundred nurses on staff, and the company now is really focused on providing remote patient healthcare for senior citizens who can't really get to the doctor as easy as they would like to.
And yet with all of this going on, you're also serving as CTO for
Yeah,
parking management company.
that's
So my probably one of the most important questions I could ever ask anybody is, how did you clone yourself?
yeah. Well, my wife and I talking, she said if I did clone myself, I would work those three guys to death as well. So I think, Greg, if part of it is, part of it is you have to know. This is one of the things I talk to entrepreneurs about is as a founder and a beginner of a company, you have to know when your value is not where it needs to be. So let me give you an example. At Telemate, I had a business partner with me. She had been in healthcare for many, many years. Her relationships were in the business. I was the tech guy. We built some really cool stuff. But as investor Troy realized, Tamara was more suited to run the business. Tamara could do better at growing the company. So from my perspective, what I like to do, Greg, is you got to check the pride at the door. If you start a company, know your role, know your position, know where your best value in the company is. An investor hat makes you sit there and ensure that your return is where you want it.
That's amazing. All of this. I'm just, I go back to when we were together at MTSU in the relatively immature stages of our career. So
Yeah.
I was in charge of the network, and you were going to school, and you helped out part time there, part of the network. And I got to tell you, I got to ask you another important question, because my days of working in networking seemed to be like everything was nice and relatively stress free. Yeah, you got those calls in the middle of the night and all that. But I look back on all the networking days, and sometimes I think that maybe that's what I want to do as like a retirement career. I know I'm never going to do it, but do you ever yearn for the simplicity of those days?
I do. I do believe that it's a fun time to be in tech that we're in today. So I do believe some
Hmm.
of the simplicity, Greg, is coming back. And I'll tell you, like with simplicity comes complexity, right? So I had an amazing epiphany the other day when daylight savings time happened. And I remember 20 years ago when daylight savings time would happen, I would have servers that wouldn't change time. I would have problems with time sinks. We would have all these challenges. And I had this epiphany. Not only do I not have server time sync challenges, I don't even have servers. I'm running microservices in the cloud. And so you really think about it, it's a cool time to be in IT. It's a cool time to be in tech. And some of the simplicity, if you bring back and you think about the ability, what AI has brought and the ability to really code quicker and get to end results faster, the ability with cloud computing to be able to be nimble and stand things up and handle peaks and valleys. I think we're back in a time where tech is easier, but it comes with complexity. Now the bad guys have the ability to get in more places. The internet becomes a much more business critical component with cloud-based solutions. So with this complexity and the simplicity, we're fighting both battles at the same time.
And then again, also with this complexity and with this simplicity, this can also open up the opportunities for more threats. And
Absolutely.
particularly like small and mid-sized businesses nowadays, they can do things unheard of 10 years ago because of the services that are available and the technology that's available. I mean, even just the computing power that you have just on your desktop is compared to 10 or 20 years ago is just amazing. But this also opens up the opportunity for bad things to happen to the business. And certainly um, there are major threats out there. Businesses have issues with ransomware, for example, that you hear that a lot. From your perspective, and you've got many, from your perspective, today, what's one or a couple of the most significant threats to small and mid-sized business information security?
I think it's the changing landscape, Greg. I think that The really challenging component for even, I think, even enterprise class is keeping up with the landscape of the attack vectors, the bad actors, how they're continuing to get savvy as changes happen. And just as you and I were talking about, we've been introduced this new world of cloud computing and the simplicity of standing up things, but also with that comes the ability to get access and have control. And I agree with what you said. If you go back in time and you look to the year 2000, a small to medium sized business would really struggle with any security approach, with any security program, with any security plan. And today, with the services that we have and the ability to tap into some of these really nice tools and devices that I've had, you can really create an enterprise level security program within an SMB if you do it correctly, and it doesn't break the bank.
So for you as a technology officer, um, your your role is to enable, among other things, to enable that the proper technologies is in place to basically fuel the business. There can sometimes be conflicts with security, and a lot of times, for example, security is seen as the office of no. We try not to do that, but sometimes I think that on the technology side, that's maybe what is the perception. Do you, first of all, do you find that as being an issue? And if so, how do you navigate through that?
I think sometimes the office of no is it's convenient. It's real easy to say if you don't want to do something, it's a security risk, and I do see that happening, right? So I think some of it is that, but I also think if as we look at this whole world of technology and how it became what in the beginning of time, a lot of tech departments, and I reported to a CFO, and I was a business cost center. As that has now moved, and we're now revenue generating, and we have the ability to move from the innovative side of the executive suite, that has teed us up in these settings to now be a revenue generating opportunity, and that has created new vulnerabilities from a security perspective, where we're not only tied to functioning the company and business continuity, but now we're tied to directly creating and generating revenue, and the impacted side to that is can be a challenge.
So, what advice could you give to a security person like myself in order to make the relationship more effective, more efficient, less of a cost center, and more business oriented, with working with the technology and the CIO and that sort of relationship?
Mm.
Because from our perspective, sometimes we think it's like, yes, we don't want to be the office of no, but we want to enable the business. But sometimes I think that in security, we have a little bit of a problem understanding how to be business people. So what advice would you give?
Yeah, and I think part of that comes, Greg, inherently with doing security and manning the wall, right? It does promote and it creates an environment for security people where you assume the worst, right? And on the business side, they're bringing opportunities to us where they assume the best. And so the
Uh-huh.
CTO a lot of times gets caught in the middle. The business is like, this is going to happen. We're going to generate revenue. The security guy's like, we're going to get ransomware. It's going to be a problem. And so the CIO, the CTO, a lot of times ends up being the person in the middle to help work through these. And what I kind of, and in our world, like with the security components in my space, what I really try to do is let's not just answer with a no, right? Let's be
Hmm.
collaborative in the dialogue. Let's explain, because a lot of times what I find is non-technical people don't understand the no and why you're
Right.
giving them the no, right? And so just taking a little bit of time and explaining to them. And I know a lot of times in the security space, it's iterative, right? It's the same thing over and over and over and over. And so, but you got to have a little bit of patience and grace and understand that not everybody is getting the technical components that you are. And also, I know that the CISO role, that role comes with a heavy burden of consistently feeling the need to secure the company, right? And I get that. And so I think part of that feeling of it's my job to keep us secure, it's my job to ensure that we're doing the right things. I think it's okay to say that. I think it's okay to say my behavior and the way we're doing these things is to ensure we're being secure and not just be a flat out no, shut the door, walk away. And I've seen both sides, and it can be collaborative. And sometimes the answer is no, right? So and I can give an example without telling any names, but I got pulled into a discussion not long ago about a company that wanted to start retaining information and doing a online recurring payment scenario.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of discussion, and the security person had an issue with the process by which they were doing it, not that they were doing it. And what was happening is it was getting it was getting lost in translation that the CISO didn't have a problem with retaining the information. It was the way that they were doing it, and it was an insecure way. But the translation to the business was, no, we're not doing it. So I think a lot of times if there could be that's where I play a lot of times is this person in the middle and almost like a therapist sometimes, Greg, that says, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This is why you're getting the answer you're getting," and it takes a little bit of patience and grace, and it's just not easy. It's not.
Yeah, I love the fact that you went down that path, because we often talk about in security that we don't want to say no, but we want to say we want you to do it, but to reduce the risk as much as possible. In the example you just gave, you pointed out another fallacy that sometimes we have as CISOs or information security professionals, in that we haven't spent enough time building up our skill set to be able to convey that.
Hmm.
And that's where talking from the security side, understanding the business. That's why a lot of times people ask me, well, what can I do in order to be effective in this role? And it doesn't mean just be a CISO. If you're an information security analyst or something, or SOC analyst, one of my first things that I tell them is, like, understand the business. And for SOC analysts will come to me sometimes and say, why do I need to understand the business? I'm just looking at alerts and all that. Well, yes and no. There's a couple of things going on. For the most part, most of your stuff is going to be generic. It's going to translate from business to business. But sometimes, um, when you start learning that muscle memory, it's kind of like working out. You're building up muscles for when you're going to need it later on. So for everybody out there, I think that that's a very, very good point, to understand the business, understand communication. Um, I often talk about in the podcast too that one of the most important certifications I ever got had nothing to do with technology or security. It was Toastmasters.
Uh,
Have you ever done Toastmasters?
I have, yes,
You are very well spoken, and I'm not surprised.
yes.
Um, all right, so since we're
Thank
down
you
the
for that.
toast, so since
Appreciate
we're
that.
down the Toastmasters path, what's the most important benefit that you got from Toastmasters?
I think it was just confidence, having just working, and it's a muscle for sure. If you would have met high school Troy and said, "Hey, you're going to be doing public speaking and presentations, and you're going to have to do it well," I would have been like, "You're absolutely crazy." And I think what Greg, once you do it, and I think you have to just get exposure to doing it and feeling good about it, and it's the confidence, and
Hmm.
now, I think everybody still gets a little bit of a jitter if you're speaking in front of a big group. If you
Oh,
don't, I mean,
sure,
just but
that's good for preparation.
the
I
jitter's
mean,
exciting now. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. The
yeah.
jitter's good, right? So I think that has been the best thing for me is learning. Hey, it's a muscle. Like the first time you from the couch to a 5K, the first run's hard. It gets easier and easier in the same way here on that. So that would be my thing is I gain confidence.
What's your filler word that tends to get in the way? I just had a couple of ahs there, by the way.
Yeah,
uh, uh,
yeah.
for me, it's so. I
So
will
okay, yeah,
sometimes start out by saying, "So, Troy, talk to me." It's like, well, okay, all
yeah,
right,
yeah.
interesting stuff. Everybody out there, Toastmasters is wonderful, but there's a lot of stress involved, and if you have more confidence in what you're doing, Toastmasters can certainly help. But there's a lot of stress
Absolutely.
involved in the field in general as you go through, and certainly, Troy, I know, being a small business owner myself, I know on the entrepreneurial side there can be stress, not meeting payroll, for example. Having It's like, oh, how are we going to get there? You need to step away. You need to have something outside of work. And unfortunately, cloning is not a
not
possibility.
not yet, not
Not
yet.
yet. What's one thing that you do to get away from the stresses of everything entrepreneurial and information technology?
Yeah, I think Greg for me is definitely staying active and working out. It started as being an athlete in school, high school. It started in the military, continued in the military, and it really has just become part of me. At 5 o'clock this morning, I was at the gym, and what I find is that the days that I can't find the ability to go there is when I feel the stress building up on me. And I haven't understood, like I've explained to my wife. My wife, by the way, is a therapist, and I'm pretty sure she married me for the project. But at the I said to her, I don't understand why I get mental clarity from lifting heavy objects, but I do. And there's just something about it. And then we're an outside family. We go to the lake. We stay active. I'm a baseball coach. And so, what you're asking me here, Greg, is the biggest interview question for me when I hire people. How do you have work-life balance? And one of the things I tell people is you don't phase into being burned out. You wake up one day and you hate the place and you leave. And so, from my perspective, it's just the stress of this role. I've been in it a long time, such as yourself. And if you don't find a balance, it'll burn you out. There's toxic behaviors that can come out of it. And so, just staying active for me, like I know you're a runner, just staying in the gym and staying active is a big, big, big piece of mine. Also, I do meditation. I don't want it to sound like I'm some yoga person. What I just try to do is get alone in a quiet place for 30 minutes a day, collect my thoughts, let my brain get ready for the day, to come up with a list of things that we want to accomplish for the day. And when I do that, at the end of the day, I just have a sense of accomplishment. And those things allows me to kind of not, you got these big goals we're trying to get to and they seem way off in the distance, but if we build these small day-to-day things, you feel a sense of accomplishment and it doesn't let the grind get to you. I accomplished something today. And so for me, it's just working out and setting mini goals and then also be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
I have two boys and I talk to them a lot about don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your mother. And so just be nice to yourself, give yourself some slack. Tell yourself you're tired. It's okay to turn that computer off today, this evening and take some breaks. Like be nice to yourself.
Yeah, that's good advice. And sometimes I'm guilty of not being able to follow it. It's sometimes when the mind's going, you almost feel like, well, every day, every minute, every second can be a moment of productivity. But you do need to step away. And I find you talked about lifting heavy objects. I try to lift some somewhat heavy objects myself too on a regular basis. But generally speaking, whether it be lifting or cycling or running, I find that I think some of the clarity comes. It's almost like your system's flushed out. And the
Yeah.
negative side is that if I don't do something every day, I feel off, for
I do
lack of
too.
a
Yep.
better word. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think that's one of the best things that folks can do. So future plans, what's coming down? I mean, you've done so
Yeah.
much already. It's like
Well,
what's coming up?
Well, for sure, you never know where God's going to take you in plans in life, right? So I
Hmm.
have goals and I have things I want to do and accomplish. Right now, my objective is one, is that we have a lot of companies that I'm working with, and I love PMC. We're going to get that done, but immediately I'm working on a book. I got I've got a lot of pains and lessons that I've learned along the way of founding and growing and starting companies that I hopefully can put into words and paper and help people not have to make some of the decisions that I did. Or maybe make some of the decisions I did. Who knows, right?
No,
So
it's great.
a book for sure.
Well, that's good. Well, when you get it done and when it comes out, definitely want to have you back. I've started an unofficial author series. I've had a couple of folks on who've written books, and for anybody out there, if you're in information technology or security and you have a book that's just come out or about to come out, would love to host you as well too. I think it's great about promoting because the best books. Um, Personally, I think are written from those who have undergone like certain amount of experience and then can share that. It's not to say that
Absolutely.
my way is the best way, but
Absolutely.
this is one way that you could do it. That's why at the beginning of all these podcasts, and you and I talked about it before we started recording, why we stepped through the career progression in the beginning. It's not, hey, follow Troy's career progression, but you might have gained something from that. It's like, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought about that before. So
Yep.
Troy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's always great catching up with you. I just love the fact that our paths have intertwined in so many different ways over the past 25 years, and I'm looking forward to the next 25 and more. So I appreciate you,
Same.
brother.
Same here, Greg. I really appreciate the time. It's been awesome watching your career. It's been really cool how we've intertwined, and I look forward to many more.
And everybody, stay secure.